Dinner date with a serial killer. The sun set over the ocean as I close my blinds. The light in my living room turns on automatically. I walk to my kitchen and grab 2 wine glasses from the black wooden cupboard. Grabbing the decanter with my left hand, I pour the Pinot Noir into each glass. The wine swirls around the glass, leaving a faint crimson residue on the crystal. The oven's alarm signals that my timer has completed. I open the oven door and smell the rosemary and garlic butter that has melted to perfection on top of the 2 ribeye steaks. The heat from the oven graces my face before I kick the oven door shut after taking out the tray of cooked meat. I walk over to the dining room table that sits underneath a less than modest chandelier and rest the steak in the center of the table. Stabbing a fork into the ribeye, I pick it up and set each one down on separate white plates. The white plates have a blue trim that contrasts with the red tablecloths they rest on. Blood from the hot steak saturates the white plate. Bread rolls are wrapped around a thick reed cloth that line the inside of a woven basket at the center of the table. I steps back and glance at my meal, checking for any imperfections. Then, the second oven timer goes off and I remember that I am missing the cheesy broccoli. I quickly open the bottom oven door and removes the broccoli that is covered in molten cheese. I grab the silver spoon that is resting on the gray granite countertop and insert it gently underneath the cheesy broccoli. The spoon enters the platter meticulously as to not destroy the ceiling of dairy that rests above the green vegetable. There is a loud knock at the door just as I set down the hot tray onto the table. Jolting from the knock, the platter sears the inside of my arm. Fuck, I pause and grab my arm, feeling my skin blister. I'll be there in a minute, I say as I run my forearm under cool water from the sink. I fumble around in my navy silk pant pocket to locate my cell phone. With one arm still under the cool water, I select a classical music playlist on Spotify that begins to play over the echo in the corner of the living room. I ignite 2 candles in the center of the dining table and turns off the lights in my kitchen. The lights on the chandelier are dim and emit just enough light to see the food on the table below. There is another faint knock at the door as I walk into my guest bathroom. Looking into the bathroom mirror, I stare at my dark reflection, the only source of light coming from the chandelier that hangs above the steadily cooling dinner. A scar protrudes from my black collar on the front of my neck. I take in a deep breath, button the top button, and hide the deep scar underneath my silk shirt. My hand runs through my black hair to add texture as I walk down the hallway when there is another knock on the door. This one significantly louder. I unlock the brass deadbolt and twist the handle on the mahogany door. "I'm sorry to keep you," I say, but before he can finish, the eager woman on the other side barges through my door frame and embraces me. I can smell the perfume she is wearing. It was the same perfume she had on when he first met her at the coffee shop. Her light blue dress and yellow heels caught my eyes. The subtle aroma of the perfume is what really drew me in, though not too strong, but still noticeable for the people that she let get close enough. "It's freezing out here, Michael," she said as she leans back and kisses me. Her upper lip fit perfectly between mine. She rubs her arms as I shut the door behind her. She walks past me, letting herself into my home. I follow behind her like a dog following my master, my gaze affixed to her hips that sway with each step she takes. "You really outdid yourself here." She rubs her hand along the tablecloth and smiles. The candlelights created a silhouette of her curves. I, still on her heels, come to a stop with her. With my hands outstretched, I wrap them around her waist, as I gently kisses the back of her neck. "Let me take that coat for you," I said into her ear. Her shoulders shrug back as I gently pull at the sides of her burgundy coat. A tight black dress is revealed that exemplifies her curves even more so. "Such a gentleman." She tilts her head to the side. I rest her coat on my arm and pull out the wooden chair at the table. "Take a seat. Make yourself at home. I'll be right back," I said. I push her chair in and leave her in the dining room alone. I walk with a much slower pace than earlier down the hall and past the guest bathroom on my right. My dress shoes tap against my wooden floorboards in unison with the soft piano playing over the speakers. "This is quite the place you have here," she said from down the hall. I ignore her and walk inside my bedroom. I flick the switch upward on the wall and open the door to my walk-in closet. Light from the closet contrasts with the dark bedroom as I step inside. I remove an empty metal hanger from the left and hang her jacket on the right side of my closet next to a variety of women's clothes. I then parts the multitude of clothing like Moses in the Red Sea. However, salvation was not found on the other side of these females' clothes. Desperation, damnation, the faces of torture rest on the shelf behind them. The light in the closet shines down on the severed heads, illuminating them so clearly that I could see the pores in their skin. The severed heads of different women stare back at me as I gently caresses their hair. "Still look as beautiful as ever, Stacy," I said and kissed the bodiless redhead. The burn mark on my forearm fades away almost as quickly as it appeared. My palms wrap around the cheeks of this woman, Stacy, whose face is now permanently frozen in a state of fear. The eyebrows are raised, and her eyelids have been cut off, resulting in her black dead sclera to occupy her once vibrant eye sockets. I slide my tongue into her open mouth. I bring the forehead up to my nose and take in a deep breath with my eyes closed. I envision Stacy trapped behind metal bars. She is naked and alone inside of a damp cellar. The long cuts on her chest still trickle blood as she screams out for help. I let out a smile before I place her back onto my altar behind the clothes. The food's going to get cold. What's taking so long? The woman asks as she walks down the hall and toward me. Her voice, closer than I expected, caused the hairs on the back of my neck to stand up. I slam the coats back together, hiding Stacy and the other severed heads back in darkness. I shut the closet door and turns around to meet my guest walking into my dark room. Sorry, I couldn't find a free hanger, I said and grabbed her waist. I give her a slight wink before kissing her on the forehead. My hand reaches for the light switch and flicks it down. The light from the bottom of the doorway vanishes. I lead her out of my room and back down the hallway. Tell me about your day. I lead her back into the dimly lit dining room and removes her chair. Again, she sits down while giving me a slight smile. It could have been better. My boss was a dick. But what's new? She casually grabs the glass of Pinot and swirls the wine as I take a seat across from her. I pull at the collar of my shirt to ensure that the scare is still hidden from her view. Bread roll? I ask as I remove a couple of rolls for myself. I hold the bread in my hand. My fingertips sink into the hot cooked dough, but not far enough to be noticeable. My eyes focus on the woman as I pass her the basket of bread. Oh, thank you, she says and reaches for the bread basket. I do not break eye contact with her as she grabs out a roll for herself. Tell me about your boss, I ask as I remove a scoop of broccoli from the still hot tray. He just forced the project onto me at the last second today and gave me less than a week to finish it. She passes on the tray of broccoli and takes another sip of her wine. It's just typical corporate bullshit. How was your day? She whips her head to the side to remove the bangs from her hazel eyes. I can smell her clean hair from the drift created by the hair flip. My day was great. My eyes close as I remember severing Stacy's head. The way she screamed for help as I slowly cut the thin skins of her neck. I can hear the bones in her neck snapping as my knife drives into the medium ribeye. I open my eyes and see the blood surround my knife that is now scraping the plate. The screech breaks my trance-like state and I focus back on the woman sitting across from me, her breasts nearly resting on the tabletop. I cleaned up my place and ran a few errands. I finish saying and take a bite of the steak. What kind of errands? She asks and takes another sip of her wine. My glass remains untouched. I had to return a few books at the library, buy a couple cans of paint, just simple stuff. What books have you been reading? Her bangs fall in front of her face as she glances down at her plate. Paradise Lost, The Great Gatsby, and Jurassic Park. Paradise Lost? I hated that book in high school. I think it's a great. What didn't you like about it? I place my elbows and rest my weight onto my arms. My teacher spent months on the idea of fate versus free will, innocence, and whatever bullshit he could make us write a 1,000-word paper on. I think the topic is fascinating. The idea that our all-knowing God simply set Adam up for failure. It was no surprise that Eve was going to eat from the tree, or that she would be able to convince Adam too. God predetermined all of that when he created them. Exactly, and if that's the truth, then what's the point of any of this? She leans back in the wooden seat and takes another sip of wine. That is the question precisely. However, just because someone knows all of the possible outcomes, that does not dictate which outcome I, or I should say we, will choose. What do you mean? Well, for instance, if I want to sit in bed all day and never go into work, I can do that, and my destiny, while a mystery to me, will be known to God. But if I choose to get out of bed and go into work, my destiny will be far more different than if I had remained in bed. However, I do not know how different. Only God knows that. We can't see what's at the end of the train tracks like he can, but we can pull the lever to switch tracks whenever we want, which, to me, makes Adam and Eve's situation even more fascinating. God knew they would be tempo. God, you're bringing back the memories of my old teacher. She interrupts and puts her hand to her mouth and lets out an exaggerated yawn. I looks down at my steak and simply nod my head with a gentle smirk. Oh, that is boring to you, but punching numbers into a screen is what gets your blood pumping? I bit into my steak and looks back at her. I'll take moving around numbers to save my clients thousands of dollars over reading a book older than this country any given day. I'll give you The Great Gatsby though. That book was an absolute bore, I said, pointing my fork at her. She grabs at her chest as she gently chokes on her wine. I would have to walk out of the room if you said that was enjoyable. Her hazel eyes stared back at me as the dimples push into her soft cheeks. How that book is on the school curriculum is beyond me, I said. A brief pause in the conversation fell over the room as we both take a bite at the same time. What did you buy the paint for? She squints her eyes and looks around the dining room. I don't know. I figured I needed a change. Did you figure that, or were you always destined to change the color of your place? Predestined or not, I know that ash white wall needs to be changed into more of a slate rock. I gesture to the wall behind her. She turns around and looks at the wall. The flame from the candles revealed only a faint idea of what the current color of the wall was. I used to want to be an interior designer when I was in college. She reaches for the bottle of wine, uncorks it, and tops of her glass. Well, what stopped you? I ask between a bite of broccoli. The cheese drips down from my chin before I can wipe it away with a cloth napkin. My mother, she always told me that there wasn't any kind of future in interior design, she says, and sets down her knife and fork. The cold silverware rests on top of the warm plate as she takes a rather large sip of wine, drinking nearly half of what she previously poured. Claire de Lune by Debussy starts to play over the speaker. I tap my finger against the red cloth and stare at the woman sitting across from me. She begins to squirm in her seat and becomes visibly uncomfortable. Her finger digs into the cuticle of her thumb, picking away at the skin, revealing small bits of blood. She looks up to me and tries to conceal a tear falling down the side of her cheek by shrugging up her shoulder onto the side of her face. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bring it up, I said as I set down my fork and knife and get out of the chair. No, it's fine. I mean, it's been months, she says as another tear falls from the other side of her cheek. I walk around the table and wrap my hand around her cold shoulder. I can feel the stiffness in her shoulders loosen as she turns her head into my waist. I brush her hair behind her ears and squat down to rest on one knee. I grab her cheeks in my rough hands and wipe away the tears with my thumb as I rest my forehead onto hers. Your mother would be so proud of the woman you have become, I said. My eyelashes brushed on her forehead as she gained her composure before completely breaking down. Do you think so? She asks as I stands back up. Of course, whether you became an accountant or an interior designer. If she just saw how happy you were. That's all parents want for their kids. I offer my hand to help her out of the chair. She takes my hand. I feel her delicate skin contrast with the abrasive leather that is my palms. I move her arms around my neck and I place my hands down on her hips as they sway to the somber piano. She guides me back onto the ash white wall behind me. Thank you, Michael. I don't know what I would do without you. She starts to kiss my neck with her red-stained lips. The scent of the pinot travels up from my neck and into my nose as I take in a deep breath while kissing her forehead. Don't thank me, it's the truth. You are an amazing woman, I said. I can feel her pulse racing in her arms as I drag my fingers up the sides of her arms. She is breathing like oxygen is escaping the room as I spins her around, so now she is pinned against the wall. I love you, Michael. She stops kissing my neck and I rest my hands on the wall. Are you sure it's not just a wine talking? I can see the goosebumps raise up on her arm. Her breath, inconsistent and rapid, brushed against my face. Do you love me? She ignores my question and puts my face in between her palms. I loved you since I saw you in that blue dress at the coffee shop, I said and go down to kiss her neck. Her hands slide onto my shirt, unlatching the top few buttons within seconds. Her hands dig underneath the silk to explore my body. She graces the top of my skin and finds a multitude of long scars on my chest and back. I bite down on her neck. Not so hard, she says as her hands push onto my chest. I bite in deeper to her neck. Blood starts to trickle down to her chest. She tries to push me off of her, but I am locked onto her throat like a starved leech. My arms entrap her from escaping to either side. Michael, what the fuck? She says as she pounds on my forehead with the palm of her hand. I feel her warm blood drip slowly down my throat as I lean back. The hole in her neck is exposed to the air as blood stains the ash white wall. My scars raise further out of my skin and begin to pulse in a calm rhythmic pattern. I wipe the blood from my lips as I look into the woman that is trapped in my arms. Her face turns to the side as she attempts to move away from me. Her cheek is flush against the ash white wall. My skin loses saturation and becomes an ashy gray. The exceptional muscle definition that I once had begins to disintegrate as all heat escapes from my body. I'm the angel of death, he said into her ear. My cold breath freezes the sweat dripping down the side of her head. I spared your life before, traded a soul to God to keep you alive. But now, I pause and watch her hold the wound on her neck from bleeding out further. Now, you will spend eternity with me, I said. My long fingers drive into her chest, cracking through her delicate rib cage. My cold hand squeezes onto her heart as I feel its spasm in my hand. My black eyes reflect back to her a clear image of what is happening. Her legs stop kicking and I feel the grip she had on my forearm reside as her hands fall to her wayside. I remove my hand from her chest and she falls down to my wooden dining room floor. Blood streaks along the ash white wall, following her to the ground.